Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another Throwback Thursday. We're going to do another simple 1, 2, 3 layout, and I am going back in time to 2009. I have some pictures of James and I outside at a waterfall. I have already mounted my pictures. You'll see I'm just a mounting girl. I like my pictures to be mounted. They tend to pop off the page. But a 1, 2, 3 layout means we use one designer sheet of paper, and the reason I'm doing these outdoor pictures is I really like this Wild Wanderer paper that came in the secret box. So you need one piece of designer paper that you like both sides, 2 base papers. Now the recommendation for this collection is to use beige, which definitely works. But I like a bit more of a contrast, and so I'm going to use the Craft. Craft is a color I tend to use a lot with my outdoor pages, and if you like the Craft, it is, or it was on last chance. I think it still is. Now's the time to pick it up. I'm not sure that they're going to bring it onto the permanent line. If you like it and you want it on the permanent line, send a note to Creative Memories. I know I've sent one, and I'm telling everybody to send it because they do take that into consideration when they're adding things to the line. So back to our 1, 2, 3 layout. 1 sheet of designer paper, 2 base pages, and 3 cuts. So let me move my paper out of the way, and I will bring in my trimmer, and we're going to make 3 cuts. And our first cut today is going to be at 8.5 inches. So we line it up at 8.5. Let me make sure, 8.5. And then we're going to line it up at 1.5. And then finally, we're going to cut it at 1 inch. Move my trimmer out of the way, and you should have 2 1-inch strips, a 1.5 inch strip, and an 8.5 strip. So I'll move these out of the way. I'm going to bring in my mat, and then my base pages, and then my papers. So now, one thing to note is that this paper that I had was not a 8 by 12. I had obviously cut off a 1/2 inch of it for another layout, and this was the only paper I had, so mine is not going to span from top to bottom. When you make this cut, yours will go top to bottom. I'm just making it work because it's what I had and I liked this paper. So this is going to be the base of our layout based on our cuts. So you'll put the 8.5 on one side, the 1.5 on the other side, and then I flipped over my 1-inch strips to add some contrast to the bottom. And then what I'll do is I'll bring in my photos. So this will be the base of my layout. And then this collection had some embellishments. You can see that I have some embellishments. I will probably put something over here. I've got some cute little footprints. I don't know. I'll have to play around and decide, but it'll look something like this. I will probably put a title of some sort up here. I'm not sure. I do have some stickers. Maybe adventure, some sort up there. I don't know, we'll have to play. But this is kind of where we're starting. Now, the one thing I did want to talk to you about with this particular layout especially is we have recently brought some inks into our line. And I know a lot of people don't like to ink, or they don't know why to ink. And this right here is a perfect example of where I would ink. And the reason I would ink is because my designer paper is very light and my background paper is fairly light. So for me, what I will do is I will end up inking around the edges just to make my designer pop. So just for an example, I wanted to show you, so this is our, I don't know what color this is. This is Potter's Clay, and there's a lot of ways that you can ink. And one of the ways that you can do it is just to go along the edge of the paper like this. And that will give, hopefully you can see that, but if I put it down here, maybe you can see it better. That'll just give a very fine line ink if you go right along the edge. And a lot of people really, really like that look, and that look, you know, that look works, and it'll help your paper to pop off of the edge. But I am a little bit messier of an inker. I like my ink to have a little bit more. So I use this tool, and it has a soft spongy top on the top of it. And what you do is you just tap this into your ink pad and then brush along the sides. So basically you go like this. And what that does is that just gives a more defined edge. So for me, that will just make it pop out a little bit more. And that's how I ink, just because I like a little bit more ink to show on my paper. So that's using this tool. But you can do it either way. It's just a personal preference. Some people just like a really thin edge. You can also use a sponge. If you use a sponge, I think I have a sponge in here. I used to use a sponge. A sponge will make an even messier edge. So it's similar to the other one. I don't know what you call it. I need to figure that out. If I figure it out, I'll link it below in the comments. But it's like it's just a little bit darker and messier look than this one is. So those are kind of the three ways that you can ink along the edge. And I'm going to do that along my designer strips of paper just to make sure that it pops out. I may even ink along the edges of my paper just because for some reason when it comes to craft, I like having a little edge on it. I might do some doodle lines also along the edges just to give it a little bit more rustic of a feel. But this is where we're starting. It was a 1, 2, 3 layout. We started by cutting our first piece by 8.5 inches. Then we did a 1.5 inch, and then that last piece we did in one inch. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the week and a good weekend. And if you try this layout, post it below. I'd love to see your work. I'd love to see if anybody's doing the 1, 2, 3 layouts to try and get some of these Throwback Thursday pictures done. All right, y'all, have a great rest of the week.